number of daily coronavirus infections has gone down today to below 4,000 mark. However, the number experts say does not represent the real scenario, as the number of tests have shrinked compared to previous days. As the virus spread has been evident even in rural areas, there is a call on the government to expand the testing parameters if we are to curb the pandemic anytime soon. Good morning, I'm Sarah Chitrakar and these are the headlines of the hour. Hearing on the writ petitions filed against a dissolution of the lower house ends without entering the issue, as law practitioners express reservations on the presence of several justices at the constitutional bench. 109 more COVID-19 patients succumbed to the virus, over 3,700 test positive in the past 24 hours. The number of tests continue to go down. Benjamin Netanyahu's time as Israel's long-serving prime minister likely to come to an end as a key opposition party backs a unity government. And two times runner-up Dominic Thiem crashes out of the French Open. Alexander Zverev and Stefanos Tsitsipas into the second round. The hearing of writ petitions filed against the dissolution of the House of Representatives could not proceed at the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court yesterday, as the session was largely focused on the presence of two justices, Bam Kumar Shrestha and Tej Bahadur Kesi, who were linked to the Nepal Communist Party case.
On Sunday, prior to the hearing on the writ petitions filed against the dissolution of the House of Representatives, Advocate Govinda Bandi raised questions on the relevancy and the impartiality of two justices at the constitutional bench. Senior advocates Badri Bahadur Karki, Harihar Dahal, Shambhu Thapa and Raman Shrestha also opined it would be better if the two justices did not sit in the bench. They argued that there was a legal trend that justices quit the bench if questions are raised against them. Chief Justice Cholinder Samser Rana then intervened to question if the lawyers were suggesting he leave as well, and in response a few lawyers said they should fulfill their constitutional duties by hearing the writs, while some others suggested the justices could take a leave. Attorney General Ramesh Badal meanwhile argued pressure had been mounting, influencing the whole case, and added no justice would be able to look into the writ petition against the dissolution of the lower house, as all of them had some connections with cases that were connected with the Prime Minister. The next hearing has been scheduled for Tuesday.
The opposition alliance, including Nepali Congress, has urged all government units to avoid being involved in unconstitutional and undemocratic activities of the government. The meeting of the alliance held at Nepali Congress President Sher Bahadur Deuba's residence in Bura Nilkantha yesterday morning came down heavily on the government for unveiling the annual budget through an ordinance instead of announcing it from the federal parliament. The alliance also accused the KP Sharma Oli-led government of trying to impose authoritarian and dictator rule in the country. The alliance believed that the Supreme Court will rule against the dissolution of the House of Representatives based on past precedent. The alliance, comprising Nepali Congress, Maoist Centre, Upendra Yadav-led faction of Janta Samajwadi Party, Madhav Kumar Nepal-led CPN-UML and Rashtriya Jana Morcha, criticized the government of running the state based on ordinances. In a statement issued by the alliance, it has accused government of harboring corruption and lacking transparency in procurement process of health materials in the wake of COVID-19. The alliance called the meeting to mull over the upcoming strategies in the political and judicial fight against the dissolution of the lower house. Finance Minister Bishnu Paudel has urged the general public to not have any doubts whether the government would be able to implement the recently announced budget. Speaking at a press meet at the Finance Ministry yesterday afternoon, Minister Paudel informed that the government would come up with further planning for the implementation of the budget. The government has repeatedly met with flack for failing to implement budgets despite making glossy promises. The government in recent years has repeatedly failed to use 80% of the total budget. In the ongoing fiscal year, the government has hardly spent 60% of the total budget. Meanwhile, Minister Paudel has claimed that the government is committed to implement the budget by activating all its mechanisms. Minister Paudel also informed that the government is focused on managing vaccines against COVID-19 and rejuvenating the country's economy. Minister Paudel also claimed the government will be able to meet the targeted revenue collection of 124 billion rupees and economic growth of 6.5% in the coming year. Claiming that every citizen would be vaccinated within 6 months, Minister Paudel said that the country's economy will return to normalcy after all citizens are vaccinated. Minister Paudel has denied that the budget intended to woo voters and added that it was baseless to raise questions on legitimacy of the budget. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has been criticized for continuing to favor his own electoral constituencies in government's budget allocation. In the new budget announced for the upcoming fiscal year, a few old projects have been revived under different names, while a new and large projects in Premier's electoral constituencies have been added. It may be recalled the Premier had changed the name of the under-construction Adivasi Janta Stadium to Madan Bhandari International Stadium, inviting massive dispute that resulted into the project stalling for 2 years. The Premier has this time around changed the entire location for the stadium to Damak's Humse Damse and allocated 5 billion rupees for the project. The stadium, as per the new budget, is to be constructed in 40 bighas of land at a community forest. Likewise, the government has also allocated additional 1.5 billion rupees for the under construction multi-storied bus park at Jhapa's Damak, saying it will be constructed into a city park instead. Other projects allocated for the region include a children paradise and complete the industrial area in Damak within the next 2 years. The exact budget for these two projects, however, has not been stated in the budget. Jhapa has 5 electoral constituencies. Majority of the large-scale development projects have been set for the caretaker Prime Minister's constituency. The opposition have hence alleged the Premier of forging a budget with the intention to woo voters for the November elections. The coronavirus crisis in the country continues amid the massive second wave of the pandemic, as 109 COVID-19 individuals succumbed to the virus in the past 24 hours, taking the national death tally to 7,272. Likewise, out of 10,986 samples tested through the PCR method, a total of 3,702 tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. According to the Health Ministry, there are 108,897 active cases in the country at the moment. Kathmandu Valley alone reported 1,093 new cases in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, 6,205 individuals registered full recovery in the past 24 hours, taking the recovery tally to 440,955. The recovery rate in the country now stands at 79.2%. There are 763 individuals in various quarantine centers across the country, 1,545 individuals in ICUs and 407 on ventilator support. According to the Health Ministry, over 3 million samples have been tested through the PCR method in the country, out of which 557,124 have tested positive till date. The number of daily tests for coronavirus through PCR method has been declining in recent days, despite COVID-19 crisis management falling under the government's top priority as it announced its budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The testing was limited to less than 11,000 yesterday.
On Friday, at a press conference in Singhadarbar, caretaker Prime Minister had said the government will expand the parameters of COVID-19 testing. The budget announced on Saturday has also prioritized coronavirus testing. However, on the contrary, the number of tests have declined by a big margin since the past 2 days. Friday saw over 19,000 coronavirus tests. A day later, the tests went down to 14,000, followed by 10,976 on Sunday. The Health Ministry has said The country can conduct up to 30,000 tests a day through 90 laboratories across the country. So far, the highest number of tests carried out on a day stands at 23,000.
PCR को अहिले हाम्रो क्षमता भनेको 30,000 को हाराइमा छ क्षमता गर्ने र PCR पनि हामी निरन्तर अहिले 20,000 को हाराइमा भइरहेछ र यसलाई पनि बढाउँदै लग्नेमा मन्त्रालय लागेको छ र कहाँ के सामानहरू चाहिन्छ जनशक्ति चाहिन्छ त्यसमा हामीले परिचालन गरिरहेछ। अहिले हामीसँग यथेष्ट मात्रामा दायित्व निकायको सहयोगले एकदमै गुणस्तरीय एन्टिजेनहरू आएको छ र त्यो हामीले पठाइसकेका छौं। अब ठूलो मात्रामा टेस्टहरू गरेर यसलाई न्यूनतम बिन्दुमा एकदमै जिरो लेभलमा पुर्याउन सक्यौं भने हामीले अब आउने महामारीबाट पनि हामी केही सुरक्षित हुन सक्छौं।
On Sunday, the number of daily infections went down to below 4,000 mark. However, the figure, health experts say, cannot be interpreted as a real representative of the infections, as testing has gone down as well.
अझ यसलाई गाउँतिर ग्रामीण क्षेत्रमा र सक्दो ग्रामीण क्षेत्र नभएदेखि जिल्ला स्तरीयमा पनि हामीले पीसीआर सबैतिर पुर्याउन पायौं भने यसको नियन्त्रण गर्नलाई चाहिँ सहज हुनेमा म चाहिँ विश्वास राख्छु।
Since March, Nepal has reported over 276,000 new infections. This calls for the government to expand the parameters of testing at the earliest and at community levels as well.
The share market has reported yet another record yesterday, even as the government increased the capital gains tax through the annual budget. The stock market yet again witnessed an all-time high turnover over 17 billion rupees, while the stock index NEPSE also reached a record-breaking high. The government had provisioned capital gain tax of 7.5% for selling shares within a year of purchase in the annual budget. However, the share market witnessed an all-time high turnover in the first day transaction of the week. A total of 42.6 million units of shares of 219 companies were traded for over 17.02 billion rupees. On Thursday, the share market had recorded highest intraday turnover of 14.76 billion rupees. National Hydropower Company had the highest individual turnover of a little over 470 million rupees. The stock index NEPSE also rose by 12.54 points to settle at 2,827.93 points. 7 sectors, including commercial banks, life insurance and non-life insurance, among others, attributed in the overall increase of NEPSE. The hydropower sector, which had seen 80 points growth, initially tumbled down as the transaction ended. In our Public Voice segment, we have asked locals in Pachthar how can one support relatives and neighbors infected with coronavirus. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
फोनबाट बुझेर आवश्यकता अनुसारको सामानहरु हामी पठाइदिन सक्छौं।
मानवीय नाताले पनि उनीहरुलाई सम्मान गर्नु पर्यो। उनीहरुलाई होच्याउनु भएन, गाली गलौज गर्नु भएन।
सहज अवस्थामा कसरी थियो त्यसरी नै गर्नुपर्छ। त्यति मात्रै हामी अलिकति दूरी कायम गरेर बस्ने।
हामी समाज आफै लागेर अस्पतालसम्म पुर्याउने काम तुरुन्त गर्नुपर्छ।
स्वास्थ्य संस्थाका कर्मचारीहरुसँग उहाँको सम्पर्क नभएको हुन सक्छ अनि सम्पर्क गर्नुपर्छ, सम्पर्कमा रहनुपर्छ। यस्तो कुराहरु लुकाएर बस्नु हुँदैन भन्ने चाहिँ सल्लाह दिन्छु।
मोबाइलबाट पनि फोन गरेर यहाँसँग सामान छ है भनेर हामीले दिन सक्छौं।
सेनिटाइजर प्रयोग गर्ने र मास्क प्रयोग गर्ने र सामाजिक दूरी कायम गरेर उहाँहरुलाई हामीले उहाँहरुको मनोबल बढाउने गरी चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ राम्रोसँग चाहिँ हामीले उहाँहरुलाई सहयोग गर्नुपर्छ।
It's time now for our segment, Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion. Here's the question: what can be an alternative for secondary education examination? Your options are A. Let schools decide, B. Return to old system, and C. Continue with existing practice. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. That's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.